The USDA's wild card on corn, soybeans, and wheat stocks and production. Jerry Gidel is about to talk about this bullish market right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So Jerry, the USDA has surprised the market. Even you that you brought very good estimates last week. A lot of people watched. We urge those people that are coming to the channel to subscribe, like, and spread the word about this channel. And what are the reasons for the adjustments?
Well, the interesting thing about it, the USDA sometimes gets kind of delayed reaction here from the uh, Midwest producers and elevators as to how the yields might be coming in. That seems to be the case because, man, did we have some dramatic changes here on the final production numbers. Last year, actually, we had corn going up a couple bushels to 177. This year, we had a 3.8 bushel decline. Now, well, that is to be very frank, I can't say a specific year that's even close to that adjustment, which is, the biggest thing is that we were projecting a year over year increase of over, for practical purposes, 6 bushels. So I guess the real twist of it on this whole thing is that particular reduction in yield produced a 276 million lower U.S. crop. Now they adjusted the harvested acres up about 200,000, but that really was a modest level, relatively speaking here, in that. And so, in a similar situation here on soybeans, they did a similar situation of decreasing the U.S. yield by 1 bushel. But they had a slight increase over there excuse me, take that back. It was a slight decrease in the crop size of harvested acres. But at this point, one of the subject matters we've been talking about in this thing for weeks has been the very dry harvesting of the U.S. corn crop and the soybean crop, which dropped them significantly below the standard yields or standard grades. For corn, it's 15.5 bushels, 15.5 percent moisture on to make a number two corn. Well, if you bring in it's good to bring in lower things so you don't have to have drying costs, but at the same time, you turn around and and all of a sudden you have a significant portion of the crop that comes in at, well, in many cases, towards the end here, we're in that we had 30% maybe there, or 40% of the crop that came in way below that 15.5. And that ultimately means that the pounds that are in the elevator turns out to produce a smaller yield. And that being the case, that really has been, I think, the big factor in here that caused both corn and soybeans. We actually had a pretty good drop in beans back in November here. They went down 1.4 bushels, 1.4 bushel yield nationwide because of that. Now we had some other issues. We had two hurricanes go through. We had less harvested acres in this area from the Gulf all the way up to Virginia. And also, we ended up having what we talked about here about the reduced moisture content of the crop and that. But we turned around and still had another bushel down in soybeans today, which that was even surprising to me that we were going to have that. Now, in reality of it is that these numbers have reduced our crop size, but the other big question is what does it mean for is it going to adjust our demand numbers, things of that nature? Going back to the corn statistics here, with that big adjustment downward in yield, uh, and that we had a situation where the USDA was cautious then about its recent adjustments here. In They put up 150 billion back last month on corn. On exports, they did trim that by 25. And the other feature was that they slipped off their feed residual because of the December 1 stocks, and that was a little surprising to me. I thought they might adjust down the ethanol numbers, but they left those unchanged, and so the 276 million number turned out to be a 200 million carryover stock decline, down to 1.540. But still looking at some of the demand trends here, we're still 300 million basically above last year's pace on exports, and so there's a strong possibility that even with the upward adjustment last month and a little bit down this month, that we still could have overseas exports on corn. Now, the biggest problem on this whole thing is that nobody knows exactly what things are going to work out here in both corn and soybeans and the impacts of our exports because of the fact that President-elect Trump has already made plenty of noise about his desire to punish the Chinese, who are a major buyer of soybeans. On the other side of the coin, Mexico's been a major buyer of our corn, and there's definitely talk from Washington about that issue going along. And the Canadians also buy some corn and some meal from us on an ongoing basis. So there's an impact there. Of course, the Chinese buy some beans from us. But the biggest thing is that some of those impacts from where it was 5 years ago when President Trump started his uh, desire to increase our uh, buying from China, they have significantly moved their demand to the South America. And so I'm not sure there's going to be that many bushels of bean exports that are going to be impacted by a tariff situation in soybeans for there. And now the impact on corn, we've got a lot of corn already on the books. A lot of corn's already moved to South America, or to Mexico. And so I think that's another twist on these whole things. But, as I said, our carryover stock went down 200. 1.5 is an important number, downward, but probably we needed another 150, getting closer to 1.4 on that one. So let me have a drink and we'll start on beans.
Yes, I have to mention, by the way, next week I'm going to ask Mike Zuzo about the report as well. I think everybody should stay tuned. But I think another surprise of the report was the reduction in South America now that you were going to talk about soybean.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there was a lot of talk about declines and that on some ideas in Argentina, or even on the corn side. USDA did make a lot of adjustments on the this month. I think they still wanted to wait and see what was going on as the harvest just started. And by the way, I just got the first kind of updates on it this week on South American soybeans, and their harvest is starting, which I have to say is probably 2 to maybe 3 weeks behind. Now, that doesn't mean that there's part of this is back to the fact we didn't end up planting this crop until mid-October down there. So that's still 2 months. To me, that's not the way the U.S. beans turned out to be, but that's what happens in South America. So we'll see further news out of there. But going back to the soybean data, which is also surprising there, since we did have that 1.4 bushel decline back in November, and that same situation, we had some very low seed moisture situations that just doesn't match up with the number of wagons and trucks that come in there, and that's why we that came through. But I was real surprised to see another bushel on that, and then we also had a small decline in harvested acres. So that's how we got to 95 million decrease here in the crop size. Now the USDA back in November, uh, reduced its crush by 15 million, reduced its exports by 25 because of the smaller crop that we moved from 53.1 down to 51.7. Now we go down another bushel and that, and we're in the same situation we were in corn. We've really got a strong pace right now. Now, as I said, in the beans, China's been a lot more prominent as a buyer here than corn on this thing and that. But I kind of feel like they've already made their purchases and a lot of it's been shipped. So how much impact that's going to have, I think they're going to hold on and kind of ignore us through the spring. And that to see what comes out of South America. And that's really the interesting twist that might come about. And also to see what the final ideas coming out of Washington are and that on both China's tariffs on beans, and also they're a significant factor in the world markets, no doubt about that. But there's right now the biggest thing that's still hanging out in the soybean complex and generally the whole corn and soybean world is the fact that we have been dry. People are getting some concern, uh, but earlier this week, after we're about 5 or 6 days away from when they were projecting the rain, they coming into Argentina and southern Brazil, uh, they all of a sudden decided that that was more important. And it could be quite important if it spreads across. Last time we had a little bit of a rain west of Cordoba, and it really didn't spread across the country, and that's why we've kind of hung in there to on things going into the report. I think that's a factor here is going to be just as important. South American output and what that crop sizes are going to be on things. Corn is still quite out, wide open here for Brazil because so much of it in the world markets for trade comes from the second safrinha crop, which at this point is still just beginnings of getting planted at this point. And we'll end up, that'll be a big feature going forward here. The twist of it right now is the Mato Grosso. That area has had a lot of rain, so some people are even talking about that situation postponing some seeding of corn and harvesting of beans. I don't know. It's hard to get real bullish on extra rain in Mato Grosso, though, long term. That's usually means there's more bushels. And that's really a big feature in this thing is as we go forward, corn and soybeans from there. Uh, Wheat, U.S. didn't change a lot. They didn't change a lot in the world's statistics because most of the world is pretty well harvested. And
But
that
still, the stocks were reduced. So
Oh, you mean worldwide was off slightly, I think, wasn't it? But it
yeah,
wasn't a big
yes, correct.
from there. And the U.S. was, but the 257 million metric tons is been a small number. It's still a small number, and it should be more important to this to the world markets and wheat than it has been. I totally agree that people have kind of just think that you know. The, that the wheat markets in general. But I guess it's the old game of if nothing's happening in the Black Sea and it's wintertime over there. Well, there's nothing happening. I'm not sure I would guarantee that being the case. But that being said, yeah, we do need to get wheat to get going because corn and soybeans are not going to go up by themselves here. I'm really kind of cautious on things here as into early next week, we could have a real flash of stuff in on prices here. And we, as you mentioned, there's lots of things going on around the world, and we to get things exciting long term, we really need to see soybeans down at 300 million carryover in the U.S. or less. We need to see the corn carryover at least below 1.4, and that's still 150 million away as it stands right now. So positive news, but I wouldn't say we're on to $5 in on corn, or are we on the way to a number of above $11? Somebody even threw out 12. I think that was a little bit optimistic.
And what will be your short-term strategy for the U.S. farmer?
Well, I think I would utilize some advances up through, as I said, uh, going into Monday or Tuesday, probably Monday at this point. A 2-day rally is what you normally get out of this thing, and particularly until we can get some real concerns, and particularly with the Argentine weather situation that should happen mid to late week next week. I would look at the March beans here. We up there at the 1040 to 1050 zone, which is another 25 cents up. Is there something flash on that between now and early next week? I'd definitely move up my sales up into 60 to 65%. We're around 50, 55 right now. On the corn, on the March right there, we're closed out at 470 today. I would be looking at advancement there to into the 480, 85 zone. There's a possibility we might see $5, but that's it. We've got to make sure that there's some issues in South America that would generate that kind of concerns and it's not impossible at this point if this rain doesn't pick up and really occur in Argentina. That would be the feature to get there. But I think particularly uh, in but as we stand right now with the rain forecast for mid to late week next week, I would take advantage of a Sunday night into Monday or Monday night close for that events to utilize to move up our sales to into that 2/3 level at best.
Well, I hope we will beat the last time mark of over 1,700 views and invite everybody to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe and put the thumbs up. Thank you, Jerry.
Yes, well, I think so, and I think the world has now decided that maybe the USDA doesn't have the complete look on this thing, and hopefully we start to get a better handle uh, on the world weather situation going forward. But yet, it was gratifying that our ideas about this year's crop yields in the U.S. Finally come to the fore.
All right, thank you.
Take care.